Good morning. I'd like to thank the T.N.S.A. for giving me the opportunity to share again the writings of Charles Linton. And this is chapter 2. It's from 1855. Actually, his name might be George Linton. I'm sorry, but messed that up. There is a God, there is existence, and it hath a cause. Causes all tend to one center, and from it are seen to diverge, spreading their rays unto the outer circumference. From this circumference we see that they tend inward, converging toward the point, thus in man, the body, the life, and spirit. Three mighty strides toward the living center, and the center lieth still within. The effect is less intelligent than its cause. This is God, the living and loving creator of all things, the supreme Father in heaven and earth, in space and its inhabitants, everywhere and at all times, known by its fruits to be producer of good and enduring seed, known by his effects to be the one pure cause of all. The center is not inactive, but is continually in motion, doing good in all upon whom fall its divine rays. Do not imagine that God is stern and unkind, for is not the spirit of man more loving than the animals that do not enjoy his elevation? And then is not God far more loving than man's most rapturous joy can picture? Oh yes, children of the living God, he is indeed the perfection of all goodness and holiness, and oh, strive to repay him for your existence by imitating his holy ways. Let thy God proclaim all thy thoughts, and thus strive to repay him for giving thee power to think. Error has erected its own God. Error hath set up an opposite of God, of heaven, and of an eternal life. There are two powers, or one and its opposite. But as the one increases, the other one diminishes. And as God is perfection of the one, its opposite must be but that termed chaos. Oh, how weak is man! He is still permitted to exist and enjoy his own perversion. God is not changed by man. He may be misrepresented. Yet the pure and eternal one remaineth the same unto all eternity. Each and every one must have a different sphere of action. Individuality is thus obtained and thus proven to exist. All are thus their own independent monuments unto God's glory, yet all builded by the hand of God and in a measure dependent upon him. Without God's love, there is no unity and can be no harmony, neither strength. Love must cement that which lasts, for there is no lasting thing without it. If unite in the flesh, what credit have ye when the flesh returneth whence it came? There is only the more darkness to overcome. But when in love you unite, then in the fullness of God's light you will receive strength and be equal unto all the powers that can oppose your progress. Man is an emblem of creation. He hath light and darkness, life and death, deity and chaos, represented within his own being. Death is his tribunal, light his judge, and deity holdeth within his hand the just reward. Life holdeth before the light his actions, and the decision is according as the deeds performed. Chaos yieldeth her pictures in evidence. For every good action of the life hath drawn a light line upon her dark face. Beware of the dark colors, for they do not show in the perfect darkness, and the time thus wasted maketh an unfinished picture that shall condemn thee. Light attracteth light, and darkness loveth darkness. If life be by light revealed, darkness is thereby repulsed. Yet if darkness reveal the life, light is thereby repulsed. And the future progress of the Spirit is rendered more gloomy and slow than if the light were attracted. The Spirit, which has eyed the light and acted in love while in the body, making manifest God's pure truth, hath established an affinity for the light and can approach it rapidly when freed from outside influences, to dwell in its own pure depths unto all eternity. If dark thoughts have prompted actions darker than themselves, and a life becomes stained with black images, then is an affinity for darkness, and error formed which it is indeed hard to break. Thus, while the light attracteth toward its purity, the opposite attracteth toward its impurity, thus retarding the homeward passage of the poor benighted child of error. The action of the perfect Creator are seen in the varied yet harmonious actions of the universal creation. The outer is but the embodiment of the inner, and hence how supremely wise and loving must be the grand source whose condensed thoughts are countless heavenly bodies. Oh, who save God can understand God's ways? It is a fearful thing to teach. The secrets of true knowledge are hard to find, and when found are hard to be explained, hard to find because they tend step by step toward the center, God, and hard to be explained because all things are as rays of God. Man should first open the channel of his central communication with the fountain of all wisdom, and thus be enabled to view the central powers of nature's numerous hosts with an enlightened understanding. Material eyes were constructed to view matter, yet God never intended that only the outside eye should be used, but it intended it to be used to be living proof of the inner existence. From God cometh all life is but the effect of light. Each and every one hath within its being that vacancy which maketh change necessary. Each and every one hath within its being that vacancy which maketh change necessary. If all were perfect, there could be no change. From the atom up to the great Creator, all are different. All have individuality. All divide into innumerable ones. Disagreement proveth imperfection. Harmony is the fruit of perfection. All are effects. Man, thinking he knew the truth, hath made unto himself a god, and led the blind into his own trenches without a false foundation. False temples cannot be erected. They are built upon sand. Pour upon the sandy foundation the divine waters of truth, and the dreadful weight above shall sink forever beneath the surface. All things brought to the rescue will but increase the weight and render the destruction more sure. For error cannot help sustain that which truth is sinking. Truth is honest and simple, yet is the cornerstone upon which God's own throne standeth. How often our long lives spent in wasting talents that should glorify their Creator. Body, mind, and even spirit itself are made subservient unto low desires. Instead of communing with angelic companions and feasting in the light of divine wisdom, how often do they stoop and in the darkened crowd of misled children grovel in filthy, corrupting passions? There is sufficient light for all, and all have sufficient unto their own need, which if used must elevate themselves and their brethren. The blind submission of man unto the might of outside power and his fear of its punishment hath kept his spirit in bondage. As God is free, so must man become before earth can be worthy of his divine presence. And if true unto thyself, thou canst attract not only angels bright and holy, but the pure one, in whom center all pure essences, will approach and bless and purify thy spirit with his divine presence. The Son and child of God, a slave unto the flesh, a ruler in the heavens serving upon earth, the noblest of God's works, polluted, degraded, wallowing in filth, whilst the high and holy mansions of his Father is appointed tenement is unoccupied. Know, O man, that every thought is recorded in thy own light, and in thy own circle is revealed unto the sight of God. Thought is eternal as thy own spirit, and as thou thinkest, so doest thou plant seed, which if holy will bring forth actions which will render thy space most acceptable unto God. Man, thou art an eternal being, fed by eternal food, nourished by draughts of enduring strength, and of these thou must partake to fulfill thy destiny. Do not all things on earth pass away? Spirit of man is the child of God. His body is the child of earth. The body being created from the earth must receive its nourishment therefrom. And as there is in all things the seed of death, which is necessary to reproduction, so in man is death of the body implanted at his conception. At death of the outer body, the true life of the inner spirit commenceth. O strive for the true life, plant and nourish holy seed, making thy portion of thy Father's vineyard worthy of his own enjoyment. All life is of God, and all death prepareth the path for his life to enter. Thus, to give the dead life. Can death glorify God? God doeth not searches for the living among the dead. Among the spirits of men must spirit labor to be exalted of God. If ye labor among the dead, when called by your Father from the vineyard, you will be covered with stinking filth, and behold, all your labor hath been in vain. For you could not impart life, and your reward is lost. If unto the outside cares you give the life, then as they pass away with your body, is not the spirit barren as when the vineyard was entered? As ye labor for God, so do his holy attributes labor for your own exaltation. All of God's holy attributes are implanted in the spirit of man. These work out the will of their Creator, if not hindered by the individuality of the possessor. By the perverseness of man, by his outer education, they can be kept, as it were, in a state of idleness, yet they ever live, and must eventually rule his actions. Ignorance and selfishness have constantly encroached upon the Spirit's privileges. The Spirit hath on earth a hard warfare, fighting the good fight in its own household. 'Tis hard to govern unruly inherited passions and exalts selfishness. The Holy One looketh down through the centers of his creation and seeth harmony everywhere is exhibited. The remotest body in space hath its central essence connected with him. He hath a witness in every atom in the universe. Intelligence in man is the result of active powers which the intelligence of his God created. If the powers be clogged and hindered, the intelligence is thus comparatively less than were they actively employed. If they be kept active, their capacity is expended and more intelligence obtained. Who can be selfish and deceive God? He knoweth all. All goodness elevates his child. Can earth repay one who hath by unfaithfulness turned away from God? The barren love darkness, but the fruitful love the light. There is no enjoyment in darkness, for God doeth not remove or change that which is good. Behold, a child of purity, a true man, the Son of God. He is a transparent being. He walks among men unobserved. His ways are peaceful when duty does not call for activity. To himself the divine light floweth unobstructed, and through him it passeth in purity. 'Tis the light of his eye, the wisdom of his mouth, and the sweet joyous strains unto which his enchanted spirit loveth to listen. It descendeth as a shaft of living light into his spirit, and illuminating the temple in which it dwells, sends out rays of brilliant glory unto all observers. His visions are purified. He looks at the creation with an enlarged understanding. To his eye all is lovely. He looketh in the pure light in which his Father's eye beheld his creation and pronounced it good. His purity is used by deity to behold his works. He turneth toward the heaven, his longed-for home. To his vision now cometh his Father's throne. Angelic hosts smile down upon him, and in their midst standeth one who bendeth down his gaze and sheddeth around him the holy light of divine favor. Laborer, behold thy reward. This bright crown is for thee to wear in my presence unto all eternity. Thou art worthy by faithfulness and purity ennobled. Humility hath exalted thee unto a high position, and with thee I am well pleased. The Spirit of God worketh through him, and nothing so disagreeable or uncongenial as to sully his pure helpmeet. He hath no affinity for discord. His calmness repels it, and it shuns him as an enemy. Oh, what an enviable position, yet how few seek earnestly to obtain it. When obtained, it is never lost. Heaven's glory lasteth, God's light is eternal, and whosoever partaketh thereof can never forget the sweetness of the draught. This concludes chapter 2 of Charles Linton, 1855. Thank you.